This way, if it's not impacting wildlife, and I asked a warden, I said, if this change went back to Monday, would this impact management? Would this impact, the wildlife? He said, no.
I was like, well, if I throw a mic on, then I can help others the way that these people have all helped me.
Born in the heart of the Pennsylvania deer camp, with the help of experts, friends, and local legends, we bring you valuable knowledge and powerful stories for your hunting adventures. Welcome to the East Meets West Hunt Podcast with your host, Beau Martonik.
We are live from deer camp here in north central Pennsylvania. So I appreciate you guys coming on. So I got Jennifer Guerriero. Is that say your last name correctly?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And Becca Latini here with me. So up here at Becca's camp, and so it's pretty cool to get to come up here and do the podcast, in person at the camp where a lot of this discussion is going to be
For sure.
Talked about. So that's pretty cool.
It's a special place.
Yeah.
It's nothing like deer camp.
No, there's
right.
definitely not. And it's funny because I had been past your camp plenty of times,
Right.
I was like, when I pulled in and I went past, I went too far and I was like, oh, there's Keith's camp. Like I've been here before.
Yeah.
So,
familiar, right?
Yeah. So it's pretty funny.
You came with a warm welcome. There's a turkey hanging outside and everything. It's already ready to go.
Yeah, no, it's the day of recording this. It's the opening day of youth season here in Pennsylvania. So there's a nice gobbler hanging out on the
Yep, we got a little
front
guy up
porch.
here. Right first thing, right off the roost. Yep, you got him done. Love it.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. And so basically why I have both of you here and how I kind of found out about all this was originally I saw something that Becca had posted about, and we're not going to dive into this just yet, but I just wanted to give everybody kind of a preface of what the conversation is going to be about and about the Saturday deer opener in Pennsylvania. So if you're outside of Pennsylvania, it's still important to listen to, but it's mostly going to be relevant to people within Pennsylvania. And the fact that 24% of the audience is from PA, it's a pretty big number. So I'm sure that it'll get some traction here, but a very polarizing topic of that Saturday deer opener. And both of you are very strong in one direction. And I kind of wanted to, basically dive in and hear your sides and give my not I guess I shouldn't say side, but my thought process behind it and where I was before and where I am now, and just give people the information that they need to kind of make their own decision based on how they feel with it and what to be able to do with it. But before we get rolling with that, how about both of you go into kind of introducing yourselves and just giving a little background, who you are, where you're from, and what deer camp means to you. Start with you, Becca.
All right. So originally, I'm from Pittsburgh. This camp was purchased by my grandfather in 1969. So it's been in our family for over 55 years. So I started coming up when I was younger. There was a rule up here. There was no girls allowed. No girls allowed. But when I started taking an interest in hunting, my dad totally was just all game for it. And my brother was really, welcoming aboard. And I'll tell you one thing, for it being majority men up here, I was the first girl to start hunting in my family and the first girl that was welcomed in a Mile High Lodge. So rules change. I got a girl sitting next to me now. And I try to get as many people up here as I can. We have an open door policy. So it took me a long time before I punched a tag because I spent a lot of time observing and mentoring and learning. And that's what makes me love hunting as much as I do, because when I finally did harvest that buck, I had such a different appreciation for not only my harvest, but for wildlife in general, conservationism. My dad's been coming up here since he was 5. So he started coming up like in 1970. And he carried those traditions down and raised me on them. And I hope to do the same when I have kids someday, because I think it is so important for people to experience deer camp. We always say, like, there's nothing like deer camp. And I mean, if anybody hasn't experienced it, like I always say, we have an open door policy, like reach out, come on up. Like I want everybody to experience like the camaraderie and the unity that we have in this camp.
Yeah.
So
You got to be careful what you wish for by.
But yeah, only if you're cool. Don't come knocking if you're not cool. You don't want to meet Fred. He's not someone you want to run into if you're not cool.
Yeah. Well, what about you, Jennifer?
Yeah. So Becca and I have some similarities in our background and how we got into hunting, but I'll start off with I can proudly say that this is the 100th year of our family hunting up here in this area. So I'm really proud of that. And I started off young as well, but all, really stemmed from my grandfather. He started me off, and then my dad really finished me off, but certainly not finished. I'm definitely still learning something, every year going out into the woods. But it was not a immediate, girl, welcome in the camp for me. And so you had to, just as actually really all of us, I have two older brothers, we had to prove that we were able to be there with the older hunters. But, me definitely, I had to do a little bit more because of being a female. But I successfully did that. But, we certainly have to, honor our roles in camp. And, being the youngest, one of your responsibilities to ensure we have water. So our camp is a little different than Becca's. We run off of a generator, no running water. So, some extra duties that we have to do, but all that to be said, that was how we really proved ourselves to be able to be, included in the camp tradition. And that's something that really bonded us. And then, we've grown into it, and I'm looking forward to passing that down to my niece, as she, is actually coming up this weekend. And so we start that super, super young. But I've been hunting for many, many years. Took me a while to fill my first tag as well. But, to me, it's most certainly much more than the harvest or the kill. There's a lot that goes into it. Certainly enjoy all types of hunting, turkey, deer, but as many have, started off with small game. But yeah, been hunting for many years.
Yeah. So it's what's something that was top of mind because a lady had messaged me. Well, she messaged me a few months ago, but I just saw it yesterday. So I was going back and forth with her. She, I believe it was her and her husband had bought land actually in this area, and they were like, they're building a camp, and they were like, what? She asked me, this is a good question I never thought about. She's like, what components of a camp do you need to make people feel welcome? And what are some components to think of for a camp? And like for me, the way I answered it was, you can have as much or as little as you want, but things that are important to me are having an area where you got a big table, people can sit around, hang out, couches, or something that makes people comfortable, that they could all converse and be in there. Obviously running water is not necessary. We don't have that at our camp either. We do have electricity and DirecTV. My grandpa wanted that, but no running water or anything. But there's so many. I mean, there's my buddy Johnny's camp or like Keith's camp over here are incredible. Like lodges, basically. You can have anything from that down to basically setting up a tent if you really want to.
Sure.
And that's been a topic of conversation recently with there's been a big wave of people when they travel to different states and having these deer camps of like setting up a wall tent and just having it at the truck. And it's like camp isn't really always has to be like a particular place. It's more the people that are there and the experience that's had. And that's my thought with it. But now thinking of an actual building, what do you guys love so much about your camp, and like how would you tell somebody if they were gonna like what would they look for in a camp?
Oh man, I mean, truly, I didn't. We grew up in a world. Well, I guess now where technology is it's booming, and I like coming up here and going off the grid. It's so good for your mental health to just get off the grid. What I love about my camp, though, I mean, we always have somebody knocking. And like I said, I know that can go either way, but it's always full. Like you come up here, it's always full. There's a lot of laughs, good meals, and good stories. Truly, like you can have nothing, and if you have the good people and the good audience, it makes you want to come up all the time. So we've made it really traditional as far as we have pictures all over the walls. We have, our mounts all over the walls. Everything tells a story. So somebody comes in, they look at that deer above you, when was that killed? Who killed that? And then you get to hear the story over again. And I've heard a lot of these stories repetitively, and it still sounds awesome to hear them the first time compared to the 50th
And
time.
they're never going to be the same.
No, my dad always it up.
twist.
He's like, well, then I dove under this log and did all this, and it's like, I didn't hear that 3 stories ago. Like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
I think the picture, having pictures up is something that you probably see in most camps. And I think that's, really a testament to what camp's about. I know for me, the first thing I see when I walk into our camp is a picture of my grandpa.
Yep.
And that's certainly my why. But you can also feel it in the bones of the building. You feel that culture.
The tradition.
Yeah, for sure. And then, some of the items even that we still use in the camp are just very old, very dated. We're patching things up just to keep those older things because it just reminds you. But yeah, I would say, some of that, the feeling that you get when you're coming into your camp, I would say that the off the grid piece is really great, and really important in this day and age, for checking out, mentally. I also really love the fact that I, walk out of my camp and the trails that I am walking, the people that did this before me. I think that is one of the most beautiful things. And I love that, knowing, I'm walking on this trail and my grandfather did the same exact thing, pursuing the same exact, sport, all of that.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And the pictures thing, I love that. And that's our camp has 2 entire walls that are just tacks in the walls of just pictures all over it from, ton of years ago and just all the way through. And that's whenever I bring people in to come through and everyone stands there and just looks at the pictures for hours, and everyone's got on the bottom a date and the name written next to it, and it's just it's super cool.
We use a logbook too.
Right, I was just gonna say, our logbook. We have a and then I love looking at what do you call those? The you put them on the door. I don't know if a lot of camps still do it. Trying to think of what those are called. When you're going hunting, you put your date.
The
what is that?
Roster.
The roster, yes, thank you. That is so fun because we have all of our old ones, and so just like turning the pages back and seeing who was hunting, did they get something, what were they hunting with? I think that is
so special.
It's so cool, yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, no, journaling is so cool with it, and I that's why when I was asking you about that, what the record book is, as you call it there, what that is, and having that. And our camp definitely doesn't have. We don't have an actual record book, which I wish we did. A log book. It's just more of every person individually writing down their own hunts, but they keep it.
They keep it for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad's so secretive about his hunting spots and everything that I don't even get to see his books, but he's got a stack of books from 30 years ago, just all the way down through. So.
Yeah. I think one other component is in this day and age and the generations that, we have existing today, they may not have that space or that place to necessarily go and see some of the history of their family. People have maybe vacation homes or whatnot, but that is to me something really special that we may not have as much as we used to, and I feel like that's why it's so important to maintain that camp life, that tradition, those records. It's not just how many times do you take a picture on your phone and then you're you never look at it again.
Yeah.
But these kinds of things are tangible, and they don't, they're not going to get deleted. They're not up in the cloud. They're right here for you to sit down and look at. So
yeah, no, that is so true. Just being able to see that and have that ability and to be present in, because if you don't have phone service, that obviously helps a lot for that piece of it. But where can you think of in normal life anymore where you can be 100% present in the moment and what you're doing versus thinking of what you have to, the list of things that you have to do next.
Right.
So true.
It's so true.
Yeah. And it's kind of fun too. Like even what you were talking about with your camp with, needing to get water and stuff, you have like these steps and it's like these things that you have to go through. And I even think of it like when I'm hunting out west and it's like, it's a very simple way of living. It's like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do for food, water, and hunting basically. Like that's the focus on it. Now,
that's all you need.
When you have a camp, you add a little thing. Maybe there's, maybe some beverages involved and some other things that can add to it. But it's a very simple way of being able to do things.
For sure. Camps are so special. And if more people can experience it, I think they'd understand and agree.
Yeah.
For sure.
No, and I think, you saw, like, I got a bunch of stickers for you guys.
Oh, man.
But, so it's Make Deer Camp Great Again. Because it's like, it's one of those things that with younger generations, including, even our generations, that it's slowly dying, like where that there's not as much of it happening as there was in previous generations. And that's one of my goals in having an audience to be able to talk to with it is to regenerate that. And I just shared something yesterday where I got an email from a guy that met me at a show and was talking to me, and the next week him and his wife bought 17 acres and they put a trailer on it to start, and he's like, eventually we're going to build our our camp there, but this is and he was
that's awesome, sending
me trail camera pictures, and he's like, oh, we've been there for a year now and going through it. And I was like, that's awesome. Like and I've had so many of those emails over the years, and that to me is like, all right, that's purpose of being able to see that continue.
I always say it's like the roots.
Yeah.
Like you got to start on some foundation. And when you start with sportsmanship and tradition and camaraderie, it just builds up from there.
Yeah.
So for sure.
No, and one of the reasons why when I was telling you guys that I have the property, it's not too far from here actually, that turning it into an Airbnb was a way of when people can't necessarily buy things right away or they want to try it. It's like, okay, that's a way people can get involved for a low price. They don't have to worry about maintenance, doing things, and be able to still have that deer camp experience and then see, like, hopefully that gets to the point where they're like, oh, we don't want to rent anymore, we want to have our own place, right, and have the ability to be able to do so.
For sure. There's in my opinion, and I've just this is just in my family, but not everybody that comes up to camp is necessarily a hunter, but everybody that comes to camp can benefit from, what you could get out of that environment. And especially, the youth nowadays, there are so many benefits, that the kids, could get from, experiencing what we get to experience. There's way too much screen time. We know
were just
that.
Talking about this morning. Like,
yeah,
they have everything so easily accessible, or like most people just throw a tablet in front of them now.
Yeah. And I mean, like coming to my camp, and this is again, just an example, but there's a lot of work that goes into it, but it's super rewarding. And unfortunately our youth nowadays, it's just this instant gratification and, they expect things. And, so the things, to kind of circle back, the things that I've learned in, having that camp life, that tradition, learning your role, knowing your ranking, that kind of
Low
stuff.
man on the totem pole.
Yeah.
Youngest one.
Taught me a lot more than, how to shoot a gun, So.
Yeah. Oh no, most definitely. I think that's a really cool aspect of it, and something that honestly I didn't think about a whole lot until I started doing this and talking about it publicly, was just because I was just kind of took it for granted. It was that's just how I grew up, and started going over there as a kid with my grandpa and shooting BB guns and pellet guns, and then upgrading to 22s. And it's just it just kept climbing its way up, and I just couldn't imagine growing up any differently.
Oh my gosh. I always say that. And like, what was I saying to you earlier? I was saying, just that I couldn't wait. So, like, if we were like going to go somewhere, like I didn't like want to sit at home and like be in front of a computer. Like if my dad was like, we're going to go for a ride, we're going to go somewhere and do something, I was like shotgun right there. Like I was ready to go. I couldn't wait to like go on an adventure, do something. So I think just eliminating screen time, getting them out there, and it builds character. Like you want better for the future generation of hunting. You want them to work for it and learn why it's important to appreciate your harvest. It's not about just going out and punching a tag, you know.
For sure. Yeah. And I recognize also, I think in my family that we were all sort of led to at least try hunting. Even me. I mean, I was the first female in my camp and truly in my family to pursue and continue to pursue. So I was recruited in very young, and, you know, I've been retained because of the bonds that we've created. But there's so much that I think our youth, whether it's hunting, it's fishing, it's just outdoorsmanship overall, not only with screen time, but just, you know, the activity level that you need to maintain to be out there, you know, pursuing some of these different sports. You know, I think unfortunately gets overlooked.
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. And so I'll start with you on this one, Jennifer. What's your like, do you have a favorite memory from camp or something that sticks in your head, whether it's a hunt or an experience or a day or whatever?
Oh, well, I could say there's probably a lot, but the first thing that pops into my head is, and we have a picture of it, is well, I think there's two now that I'm talking out loud, but they're learning how to shoot my gun. And there's this picture with this old Bronco, and I think it's me and my brother, my grandfather's in it, and maybe my dad, maybe my uncle. I'm not sure, can't remember. But I still remember that day, and I thought it was so cool because I felt like it was like, all right, I'm in, I did this, right? Like I'm in, I'm one of them now, right? But then I would definitely have to say that the coolest, or one, I don't want to compare them, but another great day was my first time actually going hunting. So learning how to shoot my gun, learning the safety of it, learning all the parts, and this was a little, you know, 22 rifle, but then going out and getting to use it and hunting with the family.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What about you, Becca?
I'd have to say it was probably one of the first times I went out with my dad, and I didn't tag out. But it was the whole day of. I mean, like, I was his shadow. I was just falling right behind him, like just like this little thing right behind him. We were sitting on a log, and it was rifle season, and I just remember it was right before it got dark, so the sun was setting, and my dad I just remember having like really special talks with him, and he always just says, like, you know, how grateful he is that I took an interest in this and it's really special to him. I just always remember that day. And I just remember leaving that day, like, I was more happy that I didn't even tag out. It was just being with next to my dad. And, you know, he's my best friend. I just could not imagine, you know, a hunt without him. And I guess another thing too is I just remember one time it was rifle actually 2 years ago. So it was actually recent, but my brother was up here. They were trying to do a drive for me at one point, or like he was at least trying to, you know, help me out. And I didn't get any, you know what? I had an opportunity. It was like 180 yards. I wasn't going to take that shot. I'm very big on that. If it's not going to be accurate, I won't take it. And I was so bummed out at first, but we all came back here and everybody made me feel so much better. They're like, we had so many missed opportunities, or we took opportunities and it didn't come true. And you know, everybody just made me feel so much better about it. It's just being in this room and those memories, like, they'll pick you right back up, you know? It just being out there with my dad, following him, walking those trails, you know, and we weren't hunting out of a stand or anything. We were hunting on the ground. So it was a little bit more challenging too, you know? You learn everything. Don't open your little Debbie snacks. Don't, you know, but my dad will be over here like, I got to go take a leak or something, and he's flushing everything out. So we laugh about it, but you know, I'm like, I can't eat something, but you can go and disrupt the whole woods. Like, just anything with my dad. But that day specifically, you know, I didn't tag out, but it was just, we were really happy to be together.
Yeah,
special.
You can never replace the look you get when you're walking behind your dad and you step on a stick wrong, and just the stare that goes right through you and burns through your soul.
Straight through.
It's complete freeze.
Yeah.
And then the turn and the look.
Yep.
You're like, where do you want me to step?
I know it all too well.
Yep, that's exactly right. And it's funny. It goes back to that with hunting. And then I always joke with my dad about, I said, that's why I said I'm not as good with you with working on stuff too, because I said, as a kid, when I'd be out there helping you, all you did was just yell at me the whole time. I was holding the
Hold
light.
the flashlight.
Yeah.
No, the trauma.
Hold the flashlight wrong.
Or like he asked for a screwdriver and you're like sweating, thinking like, which one does he want? Like, I'm scared right now. Like, shit.
Exactly. No, but it's like when I think of our camp, and there's so many times I can think of specifically with myself, but one that I remember where I brought somebody in, and this was just a few years ago. So my dad had shot a once in a lifetime deer in Pennsylvania in 2021. It was a 170-inch deer, just incredible, and 15 points. I mean, and he had been hunting this deer for years and trying. And my dad, I mean, he puts in the work for it, and especially in archery season. And it was hunting for 21 straight days. He ended up shooting it anyways. Well, anytime anybody gets something, our camp turns into everybody that you haven't seen in a year shows up and stands around the tailgate and has it. And I had some people in town, the CEO and founder of Spartan Forge, GPS mapping app, that was in town. He's from North Dakota originally.
Gosh.
And he's had a hunting cabin, but not like as big of a network of people around to have that camp experience. And he got to see it, and he talks about it to this day all the time. He's like, that was the best thing to see, when your dad shot that buck, and how happy everybody was for him, and then everyone hung out there, stayed there way too late, and it was just like
the camaraderie.
It's the unity.
Yeah,
for sure.
You can't replace that with anything.
It's a true sport where everybody's happy for you when you actually do finally get that harvest. Everyone's like stoked. It's just the best feeling ever. And that's what I mean, like that turkey that's hanging out there. I was so happy to see that little boy, like pure joy on his face. And, many times I'm sure he sat with his dad and didn't get something. But today, like, he was like, I got a turkey. And it's like, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And
like, I'm more happy that he got one.
Oh,
I'm like, next week, and I probably won't get one this season.
I know, right? Well, they're done
Hopefully.
gobbling. No. You know what I think? One thing that is not, well known or called out is, so kids today, right? If they try a sport and they can't make it, they're just not cut out for that particular sport. A lot of times what'll happen, they quit, maybe try another sport. Because they're just like, it's not clicking. They're not able to physically do it, whatever the case is. But this is truly something that is inclusive, hunting and fishing, outdoorsmanship, etc. It truly is an inclusive sport, which I think today is another reason why, we need to remind, refresh, recruit, get these kids doing this, because there's a lot of opportunity to be successful, whatever success means to you as a hunter, but versus, not being able to make the football team or not being able to make, the soccer, whatever it is. So,
yeah.
Right.
No, and then, anybody can go to camp. And even with hunting, though, it's one of those things that anybody can get good at. It's all depends on how much time you want to put in and what you want out of that experience, because it's just, if you can learn it, it doesn't necessarily take a certain athletic ability or a certain brain power, to be able to do that.
Patience.
Yeah.
And you have to have that no quit mentality.
but there's so many coaches out there, if you think about it, right? All of us that hunt, we could be considered a coach, a mentor, etc. To be a football coach, you got to know your football stuff, right? But like, I guess my point is that, if the youth come in and they participate, it's more likely that we'll get them engaged if you have people that are willing to teach. Yeah.
Oh no, most definitely. I agree. And so, that kind of transitions a little bit into one of the main topics of this and around, the gun season. And was it in 2019 in Pennsylvania, gun season had changed from the Monday opener that we were used to the Saturday opener that we have now here today. And so just to give I'll just give like a brief background with myself and what I've thought about it. I remember when it first was coming up in conversation, my family was very against it and did not want the change to happen. And when I was thinking about it, I was like, personally, I didn't want it, but I was thinking of it from the opportunity standpoint, and I was like, that would give kids that are in school and all this other stuff. Now, where I grew up, you had off Monday anyway, so that didn't really necessarily matter. But it did give a few more days, and I was like, oh, that's I was trying to think of it not selfishly. This is my original thought process with it, and it's like, okay, that would make sense. I'm like, yeah, they'd get more opportunity, be able to be out. Like, yeah, that's whatever. And for me, it's like, because it wasn't fair since I'm self-employed, so it's like I can hunt during the week. So really, that didn't really add a whole lot of benefit to me. But I was like, if that can help other people get involved, I'd see, my younger cousin that was in football and stuff. He didn't have too many days that he could get out based off of sports and everything. So that was my original thought process. And I really didn't think about it as critically as I probably should have, from the standpoint of realizing that the way it always worked was you had Thanksgiving. The next day we'd go to my dad's buddy's camp, and that was the steak night. They had best steaks you could possibly have. They had all these the giant grill that was outside, and everyone grabbed their own steak, and you were responsible for your steak, and you stood next to it, and everyone's just giving each other a really hard time while you're cooking it. And if you took it off too early, the first person that took it off, and if they had to throw it back on, you were done. You're going to get roasted pretty good.
Yeah.
You eat what you put down.
Oh, no, we'd let them throw it back on the grill, but it would be, you didn't let it live it down.
No,
I don't know if that would happen here. You'd be eating a raw steak.
And then Saturday would be everyone shooting their guns in and getting sighted in and everything. And then Sunday would be mostly at our camp, and we'd just be cooking all day, hanging out, kind of getting ready and going out. And it's a little bit different where I know people traveling in, and probably a lot of you are, putting your stands out and stuff during that weekend before, and things where we didn't really have to do that. But the other aspect of hanging out at camp, getting to see family you hadn't seen since the year prior, basically. And for me, and this is just, again, speaking for myself, I like to archery hunt more than I like to gun hunt. So ideally I'd be tagged out by that time, and I just like the campside of the gun season. But I do try to look at it objectively of like, okay, what does everybody else want, and to be able to experience it. Well, throughout the years as that's been, changed, I've seen where it's, definitely hurt our culture at camp. I shouldn't say culture at camp, but it's hurt the experience of, basically everybody is may go there Friday night to be able to hang out, but not the turnout that we used to have, because it was like, oh, got to get up early and be able to go out and hunt. And during the day Friday, if you're off work, you're going making sure your guns are sighted in and everything is good to go. And it became a rushed event and a little bit more difficult to have that same type of experience. And it was like, oh, this kind of sucks. And it's still, I was like, as we were going through it, I'm like, am I thinking of this just selfishly? But at the same time, everyone that I had talked to, at least in my circle, and now I have, a bigger circle of reaching, an audience of people, that it seemed to be the majority were in favor of the Monday side of it. And so that's where, recently I was, been thinking a lot more of it. And then I started seeing, that's how I started seeing some of your guys' stuff popping up about being, very, for changing it back. And so I just wanted to give that background on where my head has been at with it, just so we can now transition to both of you talking about it. So who wants to start?
Do you want to start?
Sure.
Okay.
So Beau, when you say that when it first changed,
Yep.
you just were kind of maybe neutral. I don't want to speak for you, but just not sure, right? Like,
Yep.
not sure what's going to come of this. And I'll be honest, when it first changed, it was like, okay, I mean, there's got to be a reason. So let's go into this and see what happens. And for me personally, I didn't feel in that first year too much of a major impact, because it didn't really, it was just kind of go, right? Like, okay, whatever, Saturday it is. I like to get up to camp either on the evening of Thanksgiving, super late, or that, first thing on Friday. But that's, because we have to set up a camp. And so we have to get up there in enough time to make sure that we have daylight to set up camp, then all the other things that, need to get done, sight your gun in, scout, et cetera, et cetera. But anyways, back to that first year, the only real possible impact that I may have experienced in that first year was the time between bear season and deer season. I'm sure that our listeners understand that bear hunting in Pennsylvania is done by drives, right? So there's a lot of activity going on in the woods, and therefore, it changes things. And when you have less days between season close to season open, that's where I felt that in that first year. And I'm like, oh, geez, you guys were just traipsing all through my area. I was planning on hunting here, whatever. Then we went into COVID and we had the effects of the pandemic. So then you're kind of like, well, are you thinking what's the real impact,
Yeah.
But shortly after that, and I would even say during the years of COVID, because we most certainly still, doing Thanksgiving and family was still together, and that's when I really felt that rush. And it was like, oh my gosh, you felt like you were, cutting out early and getting up there because you really only had 8 hours of daylight at that point to get all those things done. So then I started to feel the rush. Then, and not the good rush, right? Like not the exciting rush to go to camp. It was like, oh my God, we got to get up there and do everything.
Yeah.
And then I think we get into 2022, 2023, and I'm starting to hear, what was the initial why behind this change. And that's really when I started to get involved in the cause, because what was coming out, was saying my age group, my gender, this was for us to help increase those opportunities. And I was like, wait a minute. This isn't working. And I didn't like being put into that group. And so at that point, that's when I stepped forward and said, hold on, let me voice my opinion here. Shortly after that cascade of events, but I won't go any further just yet.
Okay. No, it sounds. I want to clarify something for anybody that's not from Pennsylvania. Bear season here, the only really effective way to hunt bears in gun season is by doing drives, and so you can get what's the maximum roster? 20 people. Something like that.
I don't know, because that's the only time that girls can't come to camp. At least in our bear camp is still off limits for the women. But anyways.
Well, and so I'm not dogging the idea of drives, because that is an effective tactic of it, and I'm for people doing it. But what it does is exactly what you said, is it impacts the deer. They don't sit there excluded and be like, hey, it's bear season, guys. We're good. We're just going to sit here, hang out. They're just hunting bears,
Yeah.
We'll wave as they go by. No, it adds that pressure and starts putting them into different places and things. And now you can definitely, use that to your advantage and whatever else. But it changes things a lot more and doesn't give those extra days to settle down. So that's when Jennifer was talking about why that impact of the seasons being so close. It's not just guys and women that are walking through the woods. It's full on, pushing clear cuts, pushing side hills, driving things out, completely disrupting what is going on. And like I said, that's the way that we hunt bears here, because it's so thick and big, big timber, and that's the only really effective way to control the population and be able to hunt them. But now continue, Becca.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Jennifer said, though, the same thing. When this change occurred, I just remember thinking, because initially we were told that there was a survey that was conducted to try and gain opinions on this. But being a younger and especially a female hunter in that group that they were trying to target, I never heard a peep or never was contacted. Not saying that, I think they only contacted a small percentage, if I'm correct. So I felt like, the rug was totally pulled out from under me. And what are you going to do? So at first, right, we all conformed and tried to give it the good old college try. And the more I started to see camps fall apart, and not only camps, but the small businesses around me, I get to know these owners of these local businesses, and I know them pretty well. And it breaks my heart to hear that they financially struggled drastically because of this change too. So not only was my camp life, being compromised, but the small businesses and those people that live in these rural areas that really rely on those weekends to, financially try and keep afloat, it was detrimental to them as well. So I was starting to notice that this was not a positive impact like they first initially said. So I think everybody was trying to see the good in it at first, and the more it started to decline, the more passionate I became about trying to raise awareness for how detrimental that this change was.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And when you're talking about the small business being impacted, basically, like when people would come up to camp, they don't just stay at camp for the most part.
Yeah.
They go out, they grab some food
Grocery
somewhere,
shopping.
go grocery shopping. Even if they do stay camp, they go grocery shopping, the local bars and restaurants. And
you might be running to get your ammo if you, God forbid you were sighting in and you struggled, and you need to get some more ammo or whatever
Good
it is.
Black Friday sales too.
Oh, yeah.
Like Grice's gun shop always had really good, opportunities. And I mean, not that everybody could run up and get a brand new gun, but it was like perfect opportunities to get out of the camp too and go visit those local businesses.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
And let's also not forget about all of the, like volunteer fire departments,
churches
and things of that nature that would have a lot of, their benefit dinners and those many cases that weekend was what, kept them through a lot of the year, that was their big event. So,
yeah, a lot of people come to, not just this area, but all the areas in remote Pennsylvania, basically, because that's where most of the public land is available, which is smaller towns, rural areas. So you have people from, examples here, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Ohio, everywhere that are flooding to these areas to get away from the city life and be able to also get out and, experience hunting in those ways. And that had an impact with the small businesses and be able to, and that was one thing I wanted to do. I have some buddies that own some local businesses that I know do really well during hunting season. I meant to talk to them before this and I honestly just forgot, but to ask them about their impacts of it. But it sounds like both of you have talked to a number of them.
For sure. And I also think too, also to piggyback off of what Jennifer said, like the 3-hour drive up here, like on a Friday or, Thursday night, it just wasn't a possibility for me to get up here. And then on Friday, I just don't want to go into the woods not feeling prepared. And, part of that is on me preparing ahead of time, but also that was the whole reason for coming up here that weekend was to really be going into the woods with excitement, like the good rush. We said the good rush.
The good rush.
And I was more stressed and like, I never would want my view of hunting to be, misconstrued, but I was starting to feel like, man, this just doesn't feel fun anymore. And that was what started to make me feel worried. I was like, hunting's always felt fun to me. It's always felt like excitement. So when this change occurred, I just was like, oh, here we go. Another rifle season on a Saturday. Got to hurry up, make sure I get up here. And it just was like the whole weekend just felt like just a big, I'm shaking my head. Just,
yeah. Those are some of the impacts that I, not necessarily in the first year, but really in the, 2020, 2021, even getting into 2022.
It was just like
you just saw people. It was like a chore, right? Like it was a job. You had to rush up here and get into do the best thing that you can on that Saturday morning. And it's just like the attitudes, like the vibes. It was. It didn't have that same feel.
Nobody felt really excited.
Yeah, it felt like your goal, your main intent was to get up there and get into the woods as safely, as quickly, as best as you can.
Yeah. And okay, so to go a little bit into some more of, or I guess thinking of, okay, let's think of kids going out. What are your thoughts on that aspect of it with kids going out, like, they could have more opportunity hunting Saturday, Sunday, Monday. What are your thoughts on the impact with kids?
You want me to start?
Sure.
I think if you bring a youth hunter in on just those terms of, all right, come on, I'm going to get you up here. I'm going to get you in the woods. Put this gun up in your shoulder. hurry up, punch a tag if you get the opportunity, rather than, hey, I want you to meet, this guy I've known for 40 years. Look at all these bucks on his wall that he shot, hearing those stories. As a kid, that's exciting. It's like magical to hear those stories. And then you think about all those people you meet and you mentored, and you have all those days to be around them and have the right mindset going into the woods. Like, every person I mentored was like, you're going to have misses. You're going to have bad days. You just hear these things. And then when you get into the woods, you're just so excited to be out there and you see a deer. And even though it might be far away, you're like, oh my God, there's action. Like, get ready. And it just feels like that's so important for the youth to experience that. You can't build a great hunter on just throwing a kid into the woods and then maybe just like whispering here and there, like, all right, you got to do this when it happens and do that when it happens. And I think you have to give them that experience. I'm going to tell you one thing. If you give a kid that true opening weekend of rifle experience versus throwing them in the woods on a Saturday morning, what kid's going to want to just get up at 4 a.m. and go sit on a log on a Saturday morning without having the backstory there? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that definitely makes sense. Like, when you're thinking about it with me, I remember sitting there and my grandpa and some of his brothers and stuff be sitting around the table telling stories. I'd be listening to all these stories, some good, some probably shouldn't listen to, but but being able to hear that and get excited and kind of like thinking about, oh, what are my own stories going to be like, to be able to get out and be able to experience those. And then hearing people talking about, their strategy, where they're going to go sit on opening day, why are they going to sit here? All that stuff starts to build. You might not, as a youth hunter, you might not be able to fully grasp it at the moment, but then as you start seeing those things, it's like, oh, okay, that starts to click. It's like when you're in school, you're in a classroom setting, you might learn a whole lot of stuff that you don't really fully understand at that time, but then you experience it at your real job and you're like, oh, okay, now this makes more sense.
You're prepared, right?
Yeah.
I always say, like, I don't know if I would be the hunter that I am today or appreciate it if I was a kid growing up with with the Saturday opener.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll start with this to be clear. The Saturday, has done more damage, in my opinion, than it has done any good. And when they're saying that we're increasing opportunity, our recommendation to move it back to Monday does not decrease opportunity. You can have the same number of days to be in the woods. So I don't think that it's decreasing opportunity. And I also don't think that just changing it to that opening, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, was the only way to increase opportunity. So I think that, there's we can do better there.
I look at it this way. If it's not impacting wildlife, and I asked a warden, I said, if this change went back to Monday, would this impact management? Would this impact, the wildlife? He said, no. And I kind of have to look at it from that standpoint, where if it's not affecting wildlife management and conservationism, it just seems like a no-brainer to me to take it back for all those years, 65 years of something that truly worked, in my opinion.
And I think the generation, again, back to that concept of who we have that we would hope to be, recruiting into the sport. We have a general issue of instant gratification. And so if these kids are going out, one eye open, super tired, 4 a.m. Saturday morning, just because I need to, get out there, I'm listening to my dad or uncle or whatever it is. And you sit out there and you're not successful, without the stories, the camaraderie, the things that you heard that you probably shouldn't have heard or saw, right? Without that, if you don't tag out, and again, just with this generation that we have, they're not going to stay with this sport, and they're not going to get the true benefits of it. And so year after year, if these kids are waking up just on Saturday morning and, being told what to do right there and then, you're not teaching them how to hunt necessarily, in my opinion. You're just kind of putting them there, and you're almost doing everything but squeezing the trigger. And so when they don't fill their tag year after year after year, they're going to lose interest.
Yeah, and the realities of it is that hunting in, and speaking specifically on these types of areas, big woods, big timber, deer densities aren't as high as typical in farm country and stuff. And with loss of access through, things being posted or leased out and stuff, that's where a lot of people, have to be at. And a lot of people want to be there, like myself, for that experience. But there are lower deer numbers. So when you have kids that are getting involved and not seeing deer, you got to find other ways to get them excited. Now, I am not a person that believes that every kid should just be successful right off the bat. I think they should have to earn it, but you have to find a way to keep them interested in the same token.
100%.
For sure.
100%.
And that's where, for me, that camp experience happened. And it's not, and I think it gets misconstrued. So before doing this, I was doing research on, there's, the Facebook page that you guys have, and then there's ones that are opposing on the opposite side. So I joined both of them and was just kind of reading through, and what I hear on the opposing side a lot was, people just want to go up to camp and get drunk and do that. And it's like, that is not, do people do that? Yeah. I mean, do people have drinks? Yeah.
I'm sure they do. Like, everybody, will have a beer every once in a while.
But that's not the reasoning behind what we're talking about. And again, yeah, there's exceptions to every rule, but there's more to that side of it and the camp aspect than a big party that adds benefit to youth and not even youth. I mean, there's a ton of newer hunters that are coming in at older ages too. I have a camp every year, a scouting camp where I bring in, there's 30 people that come in and we go through and learn how to find deer and pattern deer and go through all this stuff. And the amount of people that are much older than I am that are relatively new to it, or they grew up hunting just in backyards and stuff and want to come up and get out there a little bit more. There's that aspect of it. And for them to have the experience of being around other people that have done it for a while, or having that camp aspect of it. I've seen it so much, and being in this quote unquote hunting industry, and I've had people from all over come, and I've brought them into my camp and got to see it, and they're like, people that have hunted their whole lives and are really successful hunters but never had the camp aspect, was like, this is incredible. Like, you don't know what you have here.
That's why I always
It's gold.
say, go ahead.
Yeah, it's gold. You can't replicate it in any other way. And it's being taken for granted. And it's not. This is a tool, right? Like our agency should consider this a tool to help to recruit, retain, and reactivate, like you said, some of those hunters that maybe started hunting and are pursuing the sport again. This is a beautiful, easy, simple tool to use.
Yeah. So what are the numbers saying as far as what do people think? Because it really, like, when I thought about this, and I was like, all right, I kept trying to think of like, oh, what does everybody else think? And I'm like, really, it's I have to form my own opinion based off my experiences, and if I'm a minority of it, then, if there's voting that happens on this, then that should show. And so what do the numbers say as far as, have they, well, I know they've surveyed people, but what does that look like? And what are your thoughts on the numbers and what the majority of people, I know from my circle, what people want, but I don't know as far as the state of Pennsylvania.
Statistically, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that there's 60% that were in. I'm going to quote Representative Dave Maloney. He dissected the 1,200 pages, of what the PGC data. 60% were in favor of the Monday versus, was it 40% for Saturday? Statistics and data. And not to, I'm going to say it, numbers don't lie.
I think that there have been, I'll say, various surveys that have been done, and I don't think that they're, without going into all of the different tactics and the methods and how they've gathered it. I think what really needs to be looked at this point, besides survey, because I think there's just a lot of controversy on the methods and how they've done surveys and how they've selected those respondents. If we want to talk numbers, we are this just the past few months, it was stated loud and clear. Oh, like, this is good. We've got increased, people are increased license sales, all of that. And it sounded like great, right? I mean, who wouldn't want that? But I took some time and I started to look at, a little bit more, kind of peeling back the layers to really see what was going on. And actually what we see is that truly in the numbers, this is information and data from our game commission. Resident hunters, both adult and junior, has declined and continues to decline. And what we're seeing is, seniors are sort of kind of floating it or maintaining these sales. But let me restate that. Resident hunters, Pennsylvania residents, both adult and juniors, are declining. Mm-hmm. And if we go back, a few years and we heard, the commission saying, we did this change to honor, the youth or the 18 to 34-year-olds, and it's working and whatnot. But the numbers aren't showing it. And so if you look at the full number, there's a couple different ways to look at the licenses. So you have your licenses sold, and then you have like the total, which I believe, and I don't have the data in front of me, so forgive me, but includes your licenses plus tags. Well, what we saw was, while they said that we had an increase in tags sold, which would be including that, or total sold, which includes tags and licenses. It was doe tag allocation. And that's because the allocation of tags went up.
Has increased, yeah.
Yeah. So you're right. You know what? You guys are right. You did have an increase.
So it's not counting singular people versus it was counting the amount of tags that were purchased.
Right.
And the total cost that was associated with that.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so it's hard for me to say that that's a positive when, you allocated more tags. Historically in Pennsylvania, doe tags sell out very quickly. The other thing was, we heard, there was all this excitement that the commission saw, licenses were sold, sooner and faster, I think is kind of the gist that they were saying. But you have to get your license sooner in order to get your doe tag, which they made, that was quite a fiasco this past year. I know that they're going to be working on it, and we encourage them to do better, but you had to get your license early. So of course you're going to see that.
Right. You can't lump that in.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's, the license thing. And honestly, every state's terrible with their online licensing and how they do that with the lottery. But I was pretty disappointed that Pennsylvania followed exactly what Idaho has done and has screwed up for the last 3 years for elk tags, that from waiting in line for 8 hours online trying to get a tag.
That was a bad day. Yeah, it was bad.
I ended up going to a local place and getting it fine, but
we saw pictures lines in Walmart. People waited all day and people were not happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that but okay, so you're saying the numbers the numbers that were, I guess, that were put out for anyone to look at. And you did a really good video on that, Jennifer. So I'll have where can people find that video and where you broke down the numbers?
Yeah, it's on YouTube, and I can send you the link so it's easy to access.
Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes of the podcast here so people can find that.
Sure.
But is the way, you said numbers don't lie, and they don't, but also the way that you look at numbers can fluctuate things. But why, if the majority of people want the Monday opener, and that's true, what is the main reasoning behind not changing it? Why would, it comes down to the game commission, correct? As far as them being the ones that are changing it, but why wouldn't they want to change it? What would be the benefit for them for keeping it this way and getting a bunch of backlash?
So I think that it's been 5 years of this Saturday opener, and I think that they are fearful because of the mistake that they've made to go back and change it. But I will say that, I think that they will create, if I was sitting in their shoes, which I try to do that, in this case, if I was on the board, it's been like this for 5 years. And if we change it again, oh my gosh, can you imagine what's going to happen? And, I can tell you, at least from my perspective, the Monday opener supporters have been professional. We've come forward with data. We've come forward with suggestions. And to me, in 2018, when this decision was, made to be implemented in 2019, it was stated that we're going to make this change and then we're going to see how it goes. Great. That's a wonderful way to implement a change. But we didn't really see that, thorough investigation, evaluation of how it's going. It just kind of stayed. And part of it, I do have to say, I think is because of the pandemic, and they added, it was supposed to be changed for 3 years. But because of the data that they received during COVID, it was, an outlier. So they, kind of threw that out. So they've had this change for 5 years. It was supposed to be 3. It's been 5 years. To me, I don't think that there's any reason that I can truly think of as to why they couldn't change it back to Monday for a minimum of 3 years. It gives them 3 years of time to figure out the best method to survey, because as we kind of said a few minutes ago, there's been multiple surveys, but there's been questions, the methodology has been questionable. So we'll say that. But that gives you 3 years to figure out how to best survey all of the Pennsylvania hunters. And then the decision is made at that point, and we back off. We don't need to talk about it unless there's a reason to make a change again.
Yeah. No, and to be clear, I don't blame anybody for wanting to make a change and to, thinking it, because nobody makes a change to hurt other people. They all have reasons on why they want to do it. It's just the standpoint of, and me personally, I can't speak for everybody, but if someone just admit hey, this is not, if the numbers truly say this many people are in favor of it versus this many who are not, and that wins, okay, let's change it.
Let's go.
I'm not going to, that's...
We've tried it for 5 years. Try changing it back for 3. And like you said, in that time, you should create a fair way to listen to your constituents as well. Because if this isn't detrimental to wildlife, and this was just a change, to see if we could create more opportunity, we'll listen to the people that are buying the licenses. And
I don't want to speak for our legislators, but I'm sure that they didn't want to get involved in this, right? I'm sure that they want to be focusing on other things, but they've seen what's happened. They've seen the controversy. They've seen, the, for lack of better words, exposure into some of the activities, the behaviors, the things that are coming out. And therefore they have to get involved. And that's unfortunate,
Right. And you are in both Facebook pages. You can see the clear divide amongst hunters in Pennsylvania. I mean, and it's pretty cutthroat.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that divide happens across the board, whether it's, vertical bow, crossbow, gun hunters versus archery hunters. It's like this.
Sure.
Yeah. And I could definitely see it in those Facebook pages, which Facebook groups are interesting from the standpoint of, it always seems to turn into a battle in some of these.
It is.
We try to be very reasonable with our approaches. We put ourselves in others' shoes. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to stoop to a level of, that's the other thing. I feel like a lot of today's hunters, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I've seen an alarming rate of, I call it the entitled hunter. So it's this works for me. I don't give two shits if it doesn't work for you. Mm-hmm. It's me. It's what I want, me. And it's man, that sucks that's the kind of hunter that some of these people are turning into.
Well, and so one argument that I had heard was, okay, if you don't want to hunt Saturday and Sunday, then don't do it. And when I read that, it's that's true, but obviously it's not going to happen. If you're looking at it from an actual, what is really going to happen?
Sorry.
Oh, you're sorry. That's not going to happen.
It's more than it's more than just the.
Sorry, I'm sorry about that.
Oh, you're right.
It's your camp.
I've seen that too, and I've heard that. Well, just stay in camp. You don't have to hunt until Monday. It's up to you. historically, though, what you see on that opening day is, and what we've experienced, and you hear it, right? You hear that there's a lot more, probably tagging out. But again, that's not. If that is the solution at this, if they think that is the solution, and I'm saying they, like, collectively, but if they think that the solution is that people can stay in camp on Saturday and Sunday and just hunt on Monday, then they're actually, in my opinion, not concerned for the future of hunting. And if they think that's the problem of, and just saying, you guys don't need, you just wait, just go out on the day that you want to hunt, then they're not really seeing this whole issue of exposure and telling the truth, but not the whole truth.
Right.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah. Personally, I would like to see, Sunday hunting be implemented and then but go back to the Monday opener and be like,
yeah,
there we go.
There's some compromise for some individuals.
Yeah. That's my personal opinion on it. But, that to me, that would be like, okay, you still get basically the same amount of days, maybe one less, but have that ability to be able to do so, plus all the additional days that you would get during archery season and everything else. And that's my thought process.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. And archery is growing, and that's a beautiful thing. And I know in some of the data that I was looking at, you can see that growth, especially actually in female hunters,
For sure.
even more so. And so there are plenty of opportunities to hunt. And I think that the Game Commission, in the past few years, I mean, they continue to do that, and they continue to increase it. But here's the difference. You see an increase in the days that you can hunt archery, and you see the benefits there. There's not this controversy. There's not these impacts to local businesses. There's not these, impacts to the local fire department. You don't see that with the increased opportunities for archery. And you see people, tagging out, or they might tag out in archery and then they just want to enjoy rifle season for the camaraderie. Yeah. And so, but that's what, to ground us, like, that is really the issue. Is there's so much damage that has been done with the change from Monday to Saturday beyond, even some of the things that we've discussed here, that to me, it's really disheartening that we continue to get this 9-0 vote from our commission to say, no, we're not going to look at it. Now, hopefully there's going to be some more discussion and review and whatnot with what was recently, stated to direct the board back to the House Game and Fisheries Committee. We'll see where that goes, but that 9-0 is just it's baffling.
Just doesn't seem right.
So from anybody that's listening, what do you recommend people do as far as, whether it's learning more about it or becoming educated about it, or what are some things that people can do, some actionable items to, whether one way or another, what can people do?
So there's a lot of literature. We both have been very fortunate to be listed in articles. I did an interview with Jury Outdoors on this. The local newspapers. Jennifer has that amazing 10-minute video with all the statistics and data, all the charts. Educate yourself. And once you do so, if you feel as strongly and as passionately as we do, contact your representatives and your legislate, because we're going the full way now. Yeah. We're going up.
Because you can't expect change or things
you have to fight.
If say we didn't have these mics on, we were just sitting there complaining about something, nothing gets done that way, and you can't expect, if people don't hear it or be able to know, but by being able to give your opinion and listing reasons in a respectful way, I think that you can have some impact in that way. But and that's something us as hunters are terrible at in collective. Like in the last 5 years, I've gotten a lot better with it, but I was never, I'd complain about things and then just, that'd be it. I'd be like, oh, that's just the way that it is. But it's like, no, I mean, the way things are, I guess the way the laws and stuff are written and put out, I mean, first and foremost for the wildlife, and then two, they have to listen to the people that are
Yeah.
purchasing the licenses and tags and those types of things. So being able to be do you recommend as far as like your local legislative, or would that be the best way to bring it up, like as far as locally, or going like sending the contact us form at the Game Commission website?
So,
Well, that is tricky. I would go, well, honestly, yes, you can reach out to them.
Or both.
But I was going to say straight to, Anita Kulik and all the other representatives that sit on that board and that legislate. You can't sit, we're living proof that when you're passionate about something, I mean, we've gained recognition for this topic because we won't quit. That's the no quit mentality we say you got to have for hunting. You got to have it if you want to change something too. But as far as contacting legislate, what are your thoughts?
So I think to circle back to what you said, the most important thing, for an action item, I would say, is to become educated in this and do a little bit of homework. And I have encouraged people to, we are lucky that we've got two gentlemen that have created a Facebook page that has a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of information in this particular Facebook page. Happy to make sure that you have that link. I think you have you have it already. But
what's it called again?
Pennsylvania Hunters against the Saturday
opener.
Okay.
Yeah.
We realize now that the name could have been changed, but it's already the way
but
it is.
It is. Yeah, it's how it is today. But really, there's a lot of information in there beyond, again, many of the topics that we've discussed today. But there's very easy, simple directions on what to do, on how to contact your local. So we wanted to make it very easy for our followers to be able to take action. And so we have the links in there of how to find your local rep, their information. We've got examples of what we've sent, and but that's we want to make it easy for our followers and those who want to kind of join this coalition to take action. But I will say, like I said, educate, learn, but really think of this this impact more broadly, I think, is what we would ask those who are maybe on the fence. Not sure, maybe they're neutral and maybe it doesn't really impact them because maybe they can hunt out of their back door during the week. Maybe this doesn't really impact them, but those are the kind of individuals who might be, neutral or on the fence, that we want to make sure that they're educated from what we're sharing and the information that we're providing, because we do need that support.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, is there anything else that we've missed as far as like on those topics, or anything else that you think that you want that we should cover? I'm trying to think of.
Nothing's really, coming to mind, other than the fact that I would just say when the change happened, most people felt the impact of the tradition and camp life pretty immediately. And that's been maintained. That issue, that impact has been maintained for, 5 years and beyond. But what that has I don't know, sparked, well, for lack of better words, is this deeper dive into what the commission has been doing and putting forward and whatnot. And I think that that's part of the education too. And I think that people should take the opportunity to learn what we're fighting for beyond just, we're trying to do what's right at this point.
Right.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And yeah, I think, like with anything, educating yourself first before you make a rash decision, one way or another, and trying to understand it from both sides. And that's what I've been trying to do, of like seeing the bigger picture and not just my own thought process, although my own experience definitely you have to think about your own experience in the whole thing too. But no, that totally makes sense.
And I don't want to speak for Becca, but I would say that, reach out to us if anybody wants to talk about it further, if they have questions, I'm always happy to talk more about this.
I was going to say that, like, we're happy to provide any information and get everybody involved that we can. We want unity among sportsmen. We want that back. And I think this divide has really opened our eyes. And, really is concerning. We want sportsmanship back, camaraderie. We want to be unified. That's what hunting's about. It's a sisterhood and a brotherhood, and we need to come together. And, I think to speak, on the commissioners, sometimes it's okay to admit that it didn't work. And I think that can be a pride thing. And sometimes you just got to put the pride aside and say, okay, we hear you. It didn't work. We're going to reassess.
Mm-hmm. Do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we want Pennsylvania hunting for another 100 years, and that's when it boils down to it. That's why we're involved. We want to see this,
especially
continue.
the females out there too.
That's right. Yeah,
we need more. We need more girls.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's been cool to see how involved both of you have been, and I've watched the videos and the meetings and everything else, getting up there and speaking and
come to the public forums next year. We're inviting everybody. We usually have donuts, coffee.
Yeah,
we make a day of it.
That's
strap in.
No, that's awesome, and like I said, I think. And, after being educated, it is really important to say what you have on your mind. And for anybody that's, you said you have some very easy ways to be able to contact your, local or, whatever legislative you should be contacting. But just this is my opinion. Just remember that the way that you contact, if you come off, if I were to walk up to somebody into a bar and just start yelling at them, well, they're going to get defensive and try to fight back. And even if there's not really a leg to stand on, versus starting, by,
what do they say? You catch more flies with sugar than salt.
That's right.
Like
and in my opinion, I think that at this point, it's coming forward with a solution.
Yeah.
And it's not the conflict is there. We know, we get it. We're seeing the data, but now it's time to move forward. We want to turn the page. There's a document that I put out there on the Facebook page that gives the recommendation I shared about kind of going back for 3 years, back to the Monday. If you could make a change one time and it didn't work, why not revert it?
It's okay to say that it didn't work.
Yeah.
Maybe it works for some, but I think that we have to take into account majority here in this situation.
All right. So how does everyone contact either of you if they had any questions?
Facebook is great. Yeah, that would be fine by me. And direct message, and then I can share email if that's helpful as well.
Yep, same thing. I'm very active on Instagram as well. So I have a public Instagram. I can take as many messages, but be nice to me. Don't be mean to me. You don't want to make me mad. But Facebook, Instagram, and then I can also provide my email too.
Okay, great. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate both of you coming on and
thanks for coming to deer camp.
Yeah, I know.
It's
been great to get to see it, and I just wanted to kind of bring this topic to light and talk about it a little bit. And yeah, thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Beau.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your buddies. Leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe. If you want to check out more content like this, there's plenty in the links below. We truly appreciate having you guys along with us.